At a Christmas dinner in Denver, Mom seated Lily Parker at the end of the table and gave her a sealed envelope, while her sister received a $13,000 Paris fund. The next morning the bank called, and there were 69 missed calls from Mom. At 7:12 the morning after Christmas, my bank called and said, "Miss Parker, your mother is trying to remove your name from an account she was never allowed to touch." I stared at my phone. 69 missed calls from Mom. And the worst part? 24 hours earlier, I thought the most painful thing she had done was sit me at the end of the Christmas dinner table. My name is Lily Parker, and in my family, love was never equal. It had favorites, price tags, and perfect lighting. Christmas dinner was at my parents' house in Denver, Colorado, in a neighborhood where every window looked warm from the outside. Inside, everything was polished. Crystal glasses, white candles, a 12-foot tree. My sister Claire sitting beside Mom like she was the guest of honor. I was placed at the far end of the table beside the laundry room door. Mom smiled like it was an accident. Claire noticed. Of course she did. "Lily likes quiet corners," she said, lifting her wine glass. A few people laughed. I didn't. I just looked at Mom's hands. They were wrapped tightly around a small sealed envelope. That was the first strange thing. Mom never got nervous when she was humiliating me. After dinner she stood and tapped her glass. "We wanted to give our daughters something meaningful this year," she said. She handed Claire a gold envelope. Claire opened it and gasped like an actress who had rehearsed. Inside was a $13,000 Paris fund. Flights, hotel, shopping money, spa credit. Mom called it a fresh start. Everyone clapped. Then Mom walked to my end of the table. She didn't hug me. She didn't make a speech. She slid the sealed envelope beside my plate and said, "For Lily. Something practical." Claire leaned forward and whispered, "Maybe it's a bill." The table laughed again. "Tell me honestly, if your family embarrassed you like that on Christmas night, would you open the envelope right there, or would you leave with your dignity and read it alone?" I left. I drove back to my apartment in Cherry Creek through soft falling snow, still wearing the red sweater Mom once said made me look desperate for attention. At home, I sat on the floor beside my Christmas tree and opened the envelope. There was no check, no gift card, no apology, just a letter from Bell and Whitaker Law, dated 3 days earlier. The first line made my chest tighten. "Dear Ms. Lily Parker, as the sole controlling beneficiary of the Walter Parker Family Preservation Trust." Sole controlling beneficiary. My grandfather, Walter Parker, had died when I was 21. He was the only person in my family who never asked me to be smaller. He used to say, "Lily sees the room before the room sees her." According to the letter, he had left behind a private trust, an investment account, and a small cabin near Aspen. All under my control. Not Mom's. Not Dad's. Not Claire's. Then I saw the handwritten note attached at the bottom. "Lily, when they finally hand you this, don't listen to their story. Ask for the records." I didn't sleep that night. At 7:12 a.m. the bank called. A woman named Angela Morris told me my mother had submitted an emergency request to freeze the trust. "She claimed the envelope was delivered to you by mistake," Angela said. That was the first twist. Mom hadn't gifted me the envelope because she wanted to. The law office had forced delivery before the trust could activate. Then Angela went quiet. "There is another concern," she said. "A reimbursement request was submitted last month for Claire Parker's Paris travel fund." I stopped breathing. "The $13,000 gift?" I asked. "Yes," Angela said. "It was listed as a medical recovery expense under the Family Emergency Clause." That was the second twist. Claire's beautiful Paris gift wasn't generosity. It was an attempted withdrawal from my grandfather's trust. And then came the third twist. Angela said, "The request was denied because it required your signature." That was why Mom had 69 missed calls. She didn't want her daughter back. She wanted my signature. By noon, I was sitting in a Boulder law office with Daniel Bell, my grandfather's attorney. He opened a thick folder and said, "Your grandfather documented everything. He believed your mother had been redirecting family money for years." I looked through the papers. Old withdrawals. Fake emergency claims. Payments labeled family support that went straight to Claire's lifestyle. And one note from my grandfather. "If Elaine tries to make Lily feel guilty, remind Lily that guilt is not a legal document." For the first time all week I smiled. Mom called again while I was in the attorney's office. I didn't answer. Instead I signed 3 documents. One removed Mom's administrative access. One ordered a 7-year audit. And one demanded repayment of the denied Paris fund request. That evening Mom texted, "You are destroying this family." I replied, "No. I'm ending the part where you used family as a password." Claire called me selfish. Dad said I was being dramatic. Mom said, "After everything I gave you?" I looked around my small apartment and almost laughed. Because what she had given me was a seat at the end of the table, an envelope she hoped I wouldn't understand, and a lifetime of practice staying calm. 2 weeks later the audit started. Claire's trip was cancelled. Mom's access was revoked. And the cabin in Aspen became legally mine. On New Year's Day I drove there alone. Snow covered the roof. The fireplace still worked. Inside the desk drawer I found one final letter from my grandfather. It said, "Lily, don't spend your life begging for a chair at someone else's table. Build your own." So I did. The next Christmas I hosted dinner in that cabin. Friends came. Real friends. People who listened when I spoke and didn't measure love in envelopes. And for the first time in my life, nobody sat at the end of the table unless they wanted the best view of the snow. So tell me, when family only calls after they lose access to your money, is that love? Or panic? Moral: never think being overlooked means being powerless. Sometimes the person they push to the end of the table is the only one who can see the truth clearly.